I remade Retail Row in Fortnite. Yeah, all of it. So I got bored a couple of weeks ago, sat down and remade all of Retail Row in Fortnite Creative, in a Chapter 4 style. I also turned it into a gun game, so get ready to see some of that stuff later on. Here's the rundown. Return to the iconic Retail Row and fight in this faithfully remade POI. Your weapons downgrade as you rack up elims from a mythic assault rifle to the trusty old pistol. Jump in with island code 6123-2530-3153. Alright, now let's get into the building process a little bit. First step is simple. Terrain. I grabbed some shark terrain tiles and just started building huge grass plains, followed by some custom slope terrain around the edges to create a sort of bowl-like area. Almost like a valley. Using modular terrain, I created some small rocks that jut out of the grass to really give the area that Chapter 4 feel. This was particularly inspired by this part of Faulty Splits, which is now ingrained into my brain since I dropped there 100 times. The next step was to nature it up with the new Chapter 4 trees and rocks, including this really cool rubble that I placed around the faulty looking terrain to just make it look nicer and a little bit more natural. And with that, the main terrain is done. The next step was to remake the eastern side buildings, consisting of all these shops, small industrial buildings, and other businesses. These were easy as I could just reskin prefabs provided by Epic, and put in new props to make them look extra fresh. Noms was super easy to remake. It's literally just a prefab that I can retexture with tilted walls and props. You may notice that some walls are missing or have odd textures. This is just to connect them to the buildings that they were with in the POI. The same goes for MacGuffins in the outdoor equipment store. Tilted gave all of the MacGuffins props I could ever want, and the Greasy Grove POI island just so happens to have its own outdoor store. The Joel's Cafe, the Big Shots, and the Detective Office were also pretty easy to remake. The water tower and electrical pylon aren't really noteworthy, although the station for the zipline pylon is slightly different in my design. If ziplines are ever added to Creative, I may update this spot. I used the Greasy Grove Island's tacos restaurant to make this design for the tacos, and I love how it turned out. It really feels different and cleaner and just nice. This famously empty store remains empty in my version, however I intend to release updates every so often that change up this store in cool ways, such as maybe bringing the Hey Boo Fortnite Mez version, or the Ghost/Shadow Chapter 2 Season 2 Secret Operation Basis version. Okay, now to turn this into this. This process took up the bulk of one day. I just put on some tunes, started placing road tiles, and just had a vibe. It was a really relaxing experience to just study the images I had and place roads, and it took a few hours, also placing in the remade prefabs where they belong. I used various resources to try and recreate retail as accurately as possible. My version is based on Chapter 2's retail, so I used the Fortnite Wiki Gallery, YouTube videos showcasing the POI back in 2019, and even whereinfortnite.com, adding in some smaller details like the cars, buses, and even the reboot van, and the retail area was complete. But this build is far from over. Now, the harder part begins. The housing area. Using shark terrain to make the terrain decline, I then moved on to this small caged area that literally no one remembers. I had precisely one reference to use for this singular image from the Fortnite wiki. I took some creative liberties with some of the terraining here due to the non-existent references. However, using what little imagery I could find, I did try to make it as accurately as I could, within reason of course. Part of me even considered downloading the Rift client, not sponsored, to jump in game and take a look, but that thing takes like a day to set up and it's not really necessary when most of the POI has good references. When it came to remaking the houses themselves, some of them were helpfully included in the Greasy Grove Island, so I could just take those, make some modifications to make them more retail appropriate, and chuck them into the map. As for the others, well, Epic hasn't given us Chapter 3 house galleries, so I jumped into the Grove and started building. This brick house was really easy, as was the long blue house that's also in Salty. Now this yellow house, this goddamn yellow house, not only does it have the weirdest layout out of probably any Fortnite suburban house, it also has very little references besides this single image. Nevertheless, I gave it a loving remake and into the POI it went. Finally, I added some small details for people to see around the edges of the map, like this mountain out of modular rocks that I'm honestly really proud of. It gives the vibe of a great big Chapter 2 mountain. Also, there's this little ruined house, along with some other things like small shacks and Truckosaurus from Chapter 1. And so, Retail Row is done. That's it, right? Nope. Like I said, this is a gun game, so mechanics time. Yay! Firstly, I made this very creative spawn area by chucking down a mega maul POI. Thankfully, most of the mechanics were already ready, as I've already made a primal gun game in 2022. Basically, it just consists of mutators, damage volumes, spawn pads, and a handy timer to give people time to ready up. The weapon switching is a little bit more complicated to set up. These trackers track elims individually, which send signals to grant the next item while removing the previous from the player's inventory. And after adding accolades so I can add the XP icon to the thumbnail 57 times, the game is complete. That is how I made Retail Row in Fortnite Chapter 4. It was honestly really fun to take on the challenge of bringing back a fan favourite POI in an updated but consistent and accurate style. I loved dropping Retail Row in both of the chapters it was present, and I had so much fun remaking this POI over the space of just a few days. You know, it could be fun to do it again. If you all have any particular ideas for POIs to make into fun games, then let me know. Right now I'm thinking maybe Holly Hedges, Steamy Stacks, Slippy Swamp, or even Pleasant Park. Yeah, I have a slight Chapter 2 bias in case you couldn't tell. I hope you guys enjoyed this and have fun playing. And once again, here is the code if you want to drop into Retail Row gun game and play for yourself. Hopefully this version doesn't get flipped over. Oh no.